Welcome to Season 2, Episode 4 of The View with Vertex. My next guest is someone, if you're involved with the scaffolding industry, probably needs no introduction. He has been involved over decades at every single level of the industry. He's occupied some of the highest level positions in scaffolding, really. From mergers, acquisitions, to company ownership, everything in between. Des Moore, welcome to The View with Vertex.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
It's a real privilege to sit down and have a conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
We kind of always start in the same way, really. Back to the beginning, really. Your sort of entry into the scaffolding industry.
The beginning was age 16. Got involved in scaffolding with my sort of brother. Ended up on, I think we were working on for mill scaffolding when the M11 was being constructed, doing the sort of support work on the bridges.
Were the mills fittings around then?
Yes, they were. Yes, yeah. But that was all a system that I can't recall the name of now, but it was an orange system that's not used anymore. It was quite old and
really?
It was a support system.
Right. When I worked in Australia, there was a mills system, and it was a weird one. It was like I always said it was like almost a mixture between cut block and quick stage. It was like, it's Mills's.
It wasn't. This was a support system,
right? Okay.
It was actually a support system for to be able to sort of RC frame on the bridges to be constructed. And my first job on that was I used to get dropped off each morning on one of the bridges, given a box of nails, a club hammer, and then my job was to actually nail down all the base plates onto the timber deals after all of the work had actually been picked up for breakfast, dinner. That was it. For about 2 or 3 weeks on all the bridges. So that was my first start in scaffolding. I then went from there to the Thames Barrier. I worked on there for about 5-6 years when that was actually being constructed.
And for what we were saying before, that was like a really sort of sought after job in scaffolding.
It was a very difficult job to get on. At that time, it was very heavily sort of influenced by the unions. Not the scaffolding, but particularly the electrical union and so many others. You had to be in the know to actually even get a position on the sort of contract. It was very, very well paid, probably unusual in those days, much more so than probably what people were actually earning in the same trades in construction outside of it.
So from going on there, you kind of, at what age would that have been?
I would have been on there when I was about 21, 22.
So 21, 22 years old, earning great money and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in that position, I've been in similar positions myself, you almost get the sort of golden handcuffs and you're like, well, I've got this great position. You kind of reach a level where there's perhaps a bit of a glass ceiling, earning wise and position wise. Some stick it out and they just say, well, I'm happy, it's a job for life, I'm secure, blah, blah, blah. And others take a different route. What was your sort of path?
As I got older, obviously all I ever wanted to do was to actually earn money. Didn't care how hard I had to work for it. But eventually, I was earning very well, but like most young men, I probably just, spent all of it, didn't save anything. But eventually, I think I matured when I was about 24, 25. And I thought, when I actually come off of this project, I'm never going to earn this sort of money again. And I probably got used to what it could give you in life. In terms of possession-wise. And I thought I just needed to actually, I grew up, I matured, that I've got to go back to sort of basics and do something in something where I start off from the ground into a type of management type role and build my career from there. That's when I decided to actually sort of come off the barrier. I got a job with Palmer's Scaffolding as a supervisor. And my salary at the time was a third of what I'd been earning as a scaffolder. So it was quite an extreme sort of change.
Yeah. I suppose when we were speaking early like that, at that time, it's a risk, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? You leave a very secure, well-paid. There's always an element of risk there.
Yeah, I was fortunate so much as I wasn't married at the time, although I was with my sort of wife. We weren't married. So I didn't have any real sort of ties in that respect. I didn't have any real sort of debts or mortgage to take care of. So yeah, it was certainly a real shock to the system, but it was doable and it was needed.
So at that point, would you say not as motivated by financial gain? It was more a case of, right, I need to get into a more professional role.
Yes, that's right. I just needed to start. I needed to start at the bottom and build a career. Obviously, I knew the basics of obviously scaffolding, being a scaffolder. I didn't know anything about supervision or management, but that was the start of the route to sort of management to a senior position in scaffolding. That's it. That's how I saw it.
So you walk into Palmer's.
Yeah.
First sort of experience of, I suppose the other side of scaffolding, the non. But it's still operational, isn't it? But like the more senior, the management type positions. How was the transition?
It was difficult. It was very, very difficult. I was actually brought up in the East End and probably hadn't spent much time out of the East End. I was then given an area to actually cover that actually was in southwest London, Twickenham, Richmond. It might as well have been in South Africa, really, to me. So I didn't know the area. I was then sort of given, went around with a what we would term now as a black hat, who had actually sort of taken over from the previous supervisor on a temporary measure. I was subsequently given a diary with about 40 men in it, all different sites. 2-3 weeks later, I was an instant supervisor with an immense amount of responsibility for planning the work, paying the men, anything and everything. It was just too much, too quick, no real support. And eventually, given that I was always been a bit of a perfectionist, eventually sort of I became very ill with it. And then I had a mental breakdown and I was out of work for about 9 months.
You've written about this as well.
Yeah, I did an article on in Construction News. I never spoke about it for years. Probably put it all behind me. The primary reason for that, I think, really, as much as I said in the CN, was that particularly in construction in general, you try to hide those sort of things. I thought if I actually sort of brought up the subject that I'd actually been given a lot of responsibility early on and folded as a result of it, it would actually sort of harm my career as I went forward. So I just subconsciously just kept it. Some people knew about it, but very, very few.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because I mean, there is more, and thankfully so. Do you know what I mean? Because there is it's an epidemic of mental health crises for a lot of people working, especially in the construction industry. It's a difficult game. There does seem to be more of a shift now towards people being able to be that little bit more vulnerable and open up about issues that they're having.
Yeah, which is a good thing.
Yeah,
it's probably one of the reasons. I think when I brought it out, I was the NASC president, and I thought that also it gave me a bit of a platform to be able to sort of speak about it, perhaps help people in the industry in sort of general, see if it would help them, to be open. It didn't hold me back. I overcame it.
Do you look back at it and think there's any element of it when you look back? Because I'm always one of these people that try and see the positive in everything. Do you ever look back at it and see that that you needed that to get to perhaps where you ended up later in life?
No, I don't think that. I think it came about as a result of I was very young and not really mature enough to do a job in supervision, although I just did it. That was compounded by the fact I was given too much responsibility, and I wasn't given any support.
That's the size of most. Yeah, that's the size of a lot of. Well, if you've got a scaffolding company, and you've got 40 guys under your.
It was just a lot of too much. It was too much, too quick, and main reason why I recovered as quickly as I did, although if you could say that, is because of my sort of wife, who's been my sort of support for many, many years,
as is often the case.
Yes, yeah. So she sort of helped me tremendously, my wife Debbie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it seems like having that support around you and all the rest. For me as well, I've had be the first to admit that they've had mental health, issues in the past as a result of things that have happened within my life. And as you say, having that support around you and good people, good family, always helpful. One source of help certainly within the construction industry, is the Lighthouse Club charity. That's a charity that's close to your heart, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they do excellent sort of work. I think the sort of latest initiative they've got with Make It Visible is really good. It's got these sort of got these people going around the sort of country speaking to sort of various people.
It is visible as well. Have you seen the vans?
Yeah, it's very very visible. I think it's a great idea. I think it really really works, and I think it's something that we should all get behind.
Get behind to the extent that your new business, which we'll definitely talk about more as we go through the podcast. You've been quite generous in supporting that charity. Is that right?
Yes, and I think the reason for that, I've been the industry, apart from obviously maybe the early part of my sort of career in sort of in supervision, the industry's been very good to me.
Yeah,
I've sort of it's given me with me and my sort of family, a great standard of living, and I've earned very well. I'm now in a position where probably to a large extent my executive career has ended, and I'm now sort of doing my own consultancy. But a number of the people I've actually worked with and been inspired by have always given something back as well. So my way of doing that is, yes, I want to be a consultant. Yes, I want to help companies, and obviously I expect to be remunerated accordingly for it. But I do a lot of articles on things like LinkedIn and ScaffMag. That's free information, and it's all based on my experience, and it probably helps people. But in turn, I want to give something back from my business as well. So I'm donating 2.5% of all of my income on a biannual basis to the Lighthouse charity.
That's absolutely fantastic. It's unbelievable to me that, as you say, you've got to a position in the industry where it's given you a lot, but to be giving back on that level and just to,
But I've worked with, I had probably one primary sort of very influential character within my sort of career, and that would have been the previous chairman of TRAD, that would have been Hayden Smith. Very astute, very hard-nosed businessman, very fair, but also very generous. And probably nobody really know the amount of how generous he was to a number of causes during the time that I spent with him. And to a similar extent, probably Mohead Alred.
I mean, I was going to ask sort of about, influences and, people who've, guided you throughout your career in scaffolding. We hear the word mentor banded out quite a lot. Would you say that was the relationship between you and Hayden?
No.
Was he a mentor-mentee sort of thing?
No, I think I've never had a mentor. I've never been on any management courses. I've just worked with sort of some pretty inspirational sort of people, and probably be influenced by them to a large extent, but not consciously. And then, having said that, I've also made quite a number of mistakes and learned from them. Yeah, many mistakes. Yeah, and learned from them.
Yeah,
not make the same ones again.
Who would you sort of count as those inspirations within those good people that you mentioned that you've been lucky enough to work around?
Would I what? Sorry.
I mean, Hayden's obviously clearly one of one of the people. Any other sort of inspirations or role models or within?
No, inspiration of the people that actually have worked for me. Yes,
that's an interesting way of looking at things.
I mean, I've worked with sort of people that are far better in things that they do than I would ever be. But I recognise that, and I let them get on with it.
Yeah. So do you think that's what Hayden did with you? Do you think he brought someone in who he knew was capable?
Our model, same as what was brought Hayden, was that we empowered people to sort of do a position. We gave them details of what it was that we wanted them to do, and we gave them the scope to be able to do it. It's a bit like having two lines, and in between, You've got all of the things that you can do, but you mustn't go past these 2 lines. But there is a big scope there. And by doing that, you're able to let people run things and actually apply their own type of entrepreneurial spirit to it. When Hayden actually asked me to be the MD of TRAD Scaffolding, he couldn't expect I was going to be a mini Hayden Smith, any more so than I could expect anybody that worked for me to be a mini Des Moore. Everybody's different, and you've got to give people that sort of that scope to be able to do that.
So the people that you employed, the people that came into the business, was there a particular sort of thing that you would look for in, like, say, a manager or a leader?
We'd look for people that work hard, would be committed, and fit in. And that, when I say fit in, it just meant they wanted to be part of the team.
Yeah,
that was it. That was the sort of main priorities. The rest of it, it had the right work ethic, all of those things you would expect, but really just people that wanted to actually bought into the TRAD sort of vision, if you like.
Yeah.
And we had, I think I always said that, and I think Hayden said the same, that family always came first, but TRAD was a very close second. So as long as people got that, it was fine. So family was always first.
Yeah. So people needed, time with the families.
Yes, right. Yes, yeah. And as a result of that, we had very, very low churn rate in the business.
Yeah, I think that's something that's. I mean, we were speaking before about certain companies and the way that they look after the people. I mentioned Leia, and I know you did a lot of work with Leia early doors, and they seem to retain the people really well.
Yes, well, people are the business, aren't they? You need good clients, and you need good staff, and you need good scaffolders. I think scaffolders get a really bad sort of press. Really, I was one. Lots of them come from backgrounds where probably they haven't got a great deal of academic sort of experience, just like myself. But what other industry like ours offers opportunities to people that don't have those necessary skills or wanted those necessary skills at when they were actually being at school?
Yeah, which is strange because we have this issue that we're coming up against now in the construction industry at large, but obviously that affects the scaffolding industry by proxy. Is that we're having a skills shortage? We're struggling to bring new people into the industry. How do you think we should address that?
I think you can only address it by educating the educators. Unfortunately, children at school are always, in my view, are actually still steered away from construction. It's seen as a trade that you don't really want to get involved in. Do something in IT, do something in a professional capacity, and construction is a last resort. And probably it's the educators that need to be educated that it is a great industry to be involved in, and so is our sort of trade.
Yeah, I definitely echo that statement. Yeah. It just seems like you say that the school system, it seems to be very much geared towards academia. You go to school and then you go to college and then you go to university and you go right the way through that process. And I always remember getting young scaffolders coming into the yard, and some of them would say, "Oh, it was either this or college," and some of them still kind of debating between the two. And you're like, well, let's just imagine you did go to college, and let's just imagine you did really well at college, and then you went on to university, and then you went all the way through university from your bachelor's degree right the way through to your master's, and then maybe your doctorate, and then you come out, and then you find the thing that you thought you wanted to go into isn't right for you, or whatever. You think about the chasm between the person who just got into a job and learnt about the job, even in financial terms. Do you know what I mean? How much money you could have earned if you just started as, like, say, an apprenticeship.
Yeah, I'm a great believer in university. If you need to go to university to actually obtain a particular degree for a particular skill, medical or in sort of being a lawyer or something in that sort of capacity. But I think apprenticeships work much better. Give you much more of a direction. This is the trade that I'm actually sort of training for.
Mm.
You know, when you go to college, you go to university, you've still got no real direction as to sort of what you want to do when you come out of it.
No.
A lot of people do degrees and then do something entirely different when they're finished.
Yeah, it seems to be the case. I mean, there's this old kind of adage you hear people saying, it's like, oh, he's got a degree and now he's stacking shelves. And again, you know, should we really be stacking shelves? If like everybody's different, and you think you above all else, you've got to be happy in what you're doing, haven't you? You've got to enjoy what you're doing. It's it can be an enjoyable field, construction.
Yeah, I really enjoyed my time. I enjoyed my time on the tools. You know, I'd got to the stage where I wanted to do something different. It primarily was a result because I wanted a career. That was it really, and I wanted to actually start off in a position whereby I eventually ended up in a senior management position, and perhaps matched the same type of income that I'd actually been used to. That was my main motivation at that time.
Yeah, it's strange though, you know, because it's almost a paradox, because there's far more opportunity within the scaffolding and construction sector now to go down into other avenues. I mean, when you started your career, I imagine it would have been, you know, you're a scaffolder, and then you may be a supervisor and then a manager.
Mm-hmm.
You might own a scaffolding company. That's your lot. You know what I mean? Yeah, all right. There are different types of management roles. It might have been the yard. It might have been, you know, an operations manager or something similar. But I mean, so many different. I mean, we're recording a scaffolding podcast now.
Yes,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and this Dan at Scaff Mag has got an industry publication, so there are opportunities to write about the subject.
It's a great industry.
Yeah,
great people. So
and just far more opportunity than just being a scaffolder, or you know, far more emphasis on design engineering. You could go into that role. There's a lot of opportunity,
loads of avenues. Yes,
One such avenue, once you're in the scaffolding industry, is to get involved in the direction of the industry as a whole. Trade associations, I know, another subject that you've written about quite passionately in Scaff Mag. What was your role with NASC, and how did that come about?
It came about. TRAD had been a member of the NASC for many years, probably in excess of 30 odd years. And we were sort of involved in a number of the committees, but because obviously we started a hire and sales business, I eventually became involved in the hire and sales committee. Eventually ended up sort of chairing that. And it's a great opportunity to actually to influence and hear what's going on in the industry in sort of general, and sort of steer it and guide it to some degree. And I felt that I could give something sort of back. I wouldn't state for me. It wasn't something I wanted to put on my CV, as may have been perceived by a lot of people in the past.
Yeah,
I'm not. You know, that's probably, it was something you did at the end of your career, and that was that wasn't for me. But I was able to use it as a platform to actually deal with and bring about issues that I was quite passionate about, like women in construction, mental health, all of those things. More women in the NASC, and it also, you know, I'm being entirely honest, it also gave the profile of trade. It raised the profile of sort of trade significantly as well.
Yeah.
So there was something in it for everybody.
Yeah. I think sometimes you get. It seems like
And can I just say, I think what people don't appreciate is that being a director of the NASC and then subsequently a president, it does take up a significant amount of time that people give freely. So there's nothing wrong in actually, when I say raising the profile of your own business, there's nothing wrong with that either. I think that's
I think that's absolutely fair
for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. That's how the world should work. It's like almost seems like when you get involved in certain things, be it charity, be it. I know I spoke to Ian Hines just recently about his work with the Lighthouse charity, and he's like, well, you know, there's almost this perception because you're part of an association or part of a charitable organisation that you should be doing it completely for free, and you shouldn't be, you know, be remunerated in any way, shape, or form for it, even if it's just by raising your profile. And it's like, well, not really. That's not how the world works, is it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You have to be, you have to be a realist in these things. Yeah. I think it's quite right that you should be either remunerated or be able to promote your business in?
So I think I was able to change the direction of it to some degree. You're only given it's a short window being the sort of president of 2 years. It's a bit like being made the prime minister and only having 2 years, because ultimately then somebody else comes in and they've got a different approach. You've got different objectives and so on. So, but I think I did make some significant sort of changes, which has been long lasting. Pardon?
Is that it? 2 years? That's all you get? Or?
You have a 6-year term. You're your vice president for 2 years, 2 years president, and then immediate past president for another 2 years. I only did 4 because the end of the 4th year was the beginning of pandemic. And I just wanted and needed to spend much more time on the business and less focus on the NASC. So I actually exited at that point.
It's an interesting one because you sort of made a political parallel, and there clearly is a parallel there. In a political party, if you bring initiatives about and then the incumbent president or whatever, or prime minister or whatever, doesn't perhaps believe in what you've brought in, they could quite easily. I'm just thinking, is 2 years enough of a window?
I don't think that actually happens, but you then tend to, obviously, the incoming president, there's probably, rightly so, there's more focus on his or hers initiatives and objectives than it was on the previous. So they're still continued, but the focus very much sort of then comes onto the incoming sort of president.
Yes, when you said it the first time, it sounded like a short window, but I guess with the 6 years, these kind of these.
I think that will change to some degree now that we've got a new NASC CEO. In so much as I think sort of Clive Dickens has actually been empowered to actually run it along the lines of how a company is run.
That's kind of what I was getting at. Yeah,
and I think he's got a vision, and I feel fairly confident he's going to deliver that.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been involved in the NASC it's a matter of months. I've obviously been aware of it and I've worked for NASC members for a long time. For most of my scaffolding career, I would say, was with NASC member companies. But from the outside looking in, there definitely appears to be more of it. There's clearly a shift towards transparency. There's clearly a shift towards debunking some of the myths and fallacies that come around the NASC, it's this cartel and it's all about crossing palms and stuff like that. And I think Clive's been a real breath of fresh air with that. Very, very visible. I know they've used that term quite a lot on LinkedIn and places like that to describe them. But
if I can say, from all of those perceptions, they're just complete rubbish, because it's not like that at all. The perception was it was sort of run and actually sort of really it's steered by sort of very large companies. I think the incumbent non-execs and the ones previous to that and prior to that, apart from maybe myself, have all been from what we would call sort of relatively small SMEs. Large companies maybe sort of, maybe in excess 2-5 million, maybe sort of plus, but not the huge companies that people believe that the NASC is actually sort of controlled by.
Yeah, because it was
a complete fallacy. It wasn't like that at all, really.
I can't lie and say that wasn't my perception of it. When I was a lot younger.
I think that may well have been the case in its infancy. Let's bear in mind, though, I think the NASC has been in existence for 75 years?
Certainly longer. Well, as long as I've been alive.
It was formed by what were the sort of major companies in the industry at the time.
Yeah, I know it's normal for things to change and evolve.
But things have changed significantly over many years. It's not like that anymore, really.
Yeah, I mean,
I think what actually isn't clearly understood, if I'm being in, is people don't appreciate the huge amount of work, not just what the non-execs put in, but particularly the people that work on the various committees who actually issue the guidance. There's a lot of work that goes on from so many people actually developing guidance.
I used to work for someone Simon Hughes. I remember when SG4 they were talking about revising SG4, and you could see that there's a lot of effort and a lot of time goes into, you know, making sure that it's accurate, making sure that it's clear.
Well, Steve Kearney, who's now the health and safety sort of manager or director or whatever it would be on the NASC, used to work for me for over 20 odd years. So I'm well aware of the work that he did on the NASC committee. It was significant.
Be honest, was it ever like a frustration if someone within the organisation was, you know, oh, I've got to take time out because I've got to do this?
Steve did it all in his own time.
So he did it all in his own time. That's unbelievable, isn't it?
No.
See, this is the thing that you don't. I think hopefully Clive's going to change this. People will see that side of the NASC and see the work that goes on. You mentioned in the regionals just recently, you know, it's the first time they've actually had a business plan.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he's been a breath of fresh air from what I can see.
I agree.
Morix. So this is the new venture.
Yes, I always, whenever my executive career came to an end, you know, given my age and the amount of time I'd actually been in the industry, I was always had an intention to do something on my own to some degree. And that was going to be a consultancy. So I set that up in sort of June, and I'm looking to obviously take on a number of non-exec roles, maybe sort of explore some other avenues. So I want to remain in the industry and I want to remain relevant.
Has it been? It sounds like it's been motivated by, like you say, it's wanting to remain in the industry and not wanting to retire yet. Would you say you no longer the appetite for being a managing director of a huge company and wanted a change of pace slightly?
No, not really. It was very much a case of, the best way to describe it is that trade for me was not a job. It was everything. It was, apart from my family, it was a hobby. So I've just been everything. When I think I did an article for an interview with not Construction News, with Scaffolder, and I said I lived it, breathed it, and ate it. That's what it was. So you can't give that sort of thing up. And I just need to work. If I sort of didn't have that in front of me, I'd get up in the morning, I had nothing to do. I just couldn't do that. And I actually worked with Hayden Smith for 25 years or more. I think he retired at least 3 times and then came back and said, I've had enough of that.
Yeah, you see with football managers, don't you?
Yeah, he's had enough of that. You know, so many, and I think he said, there's only so many games of golf you can play. There's so many meals you can go out for. And that's it. You just need something to get up for each day.
Yeah, I've heard people say you retire, you expire.
Yeah,
which I think is, you know, I know it's a long way off in the future for me, but I think the same. Do you know what I mean? I live and breathe what I do.
Yeah.
So the thought of, you know, what would you replace the voice? You know, you do have to have a reason to get out of bed in the morning. You have to have a reason to.
I mean, at times, numerous times, probably you get up and probably, you think, oh, because scaffolding management is difficult, and not every day is like a walk in the park. Sometimes it's very difficult, but overall, it's a great business, and I wouldn't have ever wanted to done anything else. I enjoyed it, still do.
Do you feel this new venture will help you leave some sort of like legacy within scaffolding?
I've never been about leaving a legacy. I've never been about sort of being considered a name in the industry. I've just always wanted the companies I've worked with, and I suppose in turn being considered by others as being one of the best, and that's it. Really, I just want to, I have to earn that. If I want people to think, to sort of listen to what I say and be guided by what I say, and I've got to do it sincerely. And I've always been the same. It's got to be right. And I want things to be as best as they can be.
I'm going to draw a comparison now. It's not a comparison really, that's probably, but like with Dr. Alred, I know somebody that you mentioned, and his sort of appetite for, for work and, things to be done in a particular way. Is that something that you've taken on?
Well, I think people like Dr. Alred are they're exceptional. They're very, very focused, never lose focus, and that's why they are where they are, because they just don't lose that sort of focus. It's never about it's not clearly not about the money. It's just wanting to make a difference, and wanting the business to be successful. And just every day, I think he gets up, the same as Hayden would have done, and just wants to do that, just wants to make it, and whatever that involves. And people might think, why would he need to or want to get involved in matters of the business now, given obviously he's got immense wealth? It's because he wants to. That's his life. And I think that's the same with lots of very successful people like him.
The scaffolding companies that you intend to help with Morix, obviously, I'm not going to ask you to give your game plan away. No. But if you were to sort of think of how would a scaffolding contractor, new scaffolding contractor, let's say 2 or 3 years in, wants to get to that sort of next level where they're, maybe employing, go from 10 to 20, 30 employees, what would be some key things you'd need to consider?
It doesn't really matter what size the business is, whether you've just started or whether, a business needs to grow to flourish. It can't stand still. So therefore, it needs to sort of expand. It needs to grow sort of gradually. But it must have a business plan. It must have a vision. You must have a business plan. The business plan and the vision can be in excess of could be up to 5 years, but you really need a specific sort of plan that takes you over years 1 and 2. You then need a budget. You then need a cash flow strategy as to how you're going to achieve that vision, and an action plan to put the strategy in place, and then sort of follow it up monthly. So all of those things are just, whatever the size of the business is, they're all absolutely essential. So you need to know where you're going.
So it's about
particularly regarding cash, and working capital.
Yeah, so like the lifeblood of your business.
Yes, yeah.
Well, this is it, because I think this is what a lot of people sort of struggle with, because I know there's the old sort of saying of working in your business rather than on your business. Sometimes when you're having to keep the lights on and keep things moving, you can sort of end up getting embroiled in the day-to-day operations of the business and maybe not be as strategic with your thinking. Is there any tips you could give, like, for new scaffolding businesses about how to sort of set time aside for these strategic plans?
I think you need to set time aside. You need to have that at the outset. And then sort of work towards it. It doesn't need to be, when I talk about, people think, business plan, strategy, they all seem very big things, but it's really just a case of, where do I want the business to go? How is it going to get there? Who am I going to talk to? Who are my customers going to be? How am I going to do that? And that's your action plan. And then you follow it up.
Yeah.
It can be quite simplistic. It's not some sort of massive sort of document you need to put together. It's just really, and it's just looking at the real principles of it. I am where I am. Where do I want to be in a year's time? What type of work, and who are the customers? Who are the customers that I'm going to sort of try and get that work from?
Yeah, I think that's one place where, like, from what I see, dealing with small, medium-sized scaffolding contractors, I tend to help people out more than health and safety, compliance, risk assessments, method statements, that kind of thing. But you do ask questions, and you find out about sort of people's business plans and models and how they do things. And so often you hear, you go, what kind of customers are you looking to work with? And they're like, anyone who needs scaffolding. And it's like, it's not really the right approach, is it? You have to have that kind of avatar of.
No, you've got to look at what type of clients do I want to be involved with. You need to do some research on whether or not they're going to have the sort of ability to pay you.
Another one that a lot of people get caught out on, I think, as well, is not doing the homework and just So I've been in this position myself. You know, you get an opportunity like when you used to quote him for £200, £300, £400 jobs, £2,000 jobs, and then a job comes through the door and it's 20,000, 30,000. That's a big paradigm shift, and sometimes you can let that blind you, and you can go, I'll do things for this client.
That's what happens in scaffolding industry in general. You know, where people will actually sort of be quite forensic about quotes for maybe 100,000, and all of a sudden they've got one job in front of them for 500,000, and all the forensic side of it seems to go to one side. It's just a number.
Yeah.
But they, don't get it right, and that's just, that one takes you under. It's a bit like gambling to some degree, and it's a bit like with customers. If you can't afford to sort of not get paid, and perhaps and it's that big, then perhaps you really do need to research and decide whether or not I want to take that on or not. Because if it doesn't come off, it's not gonna it's gonna really hurt me.
Well, I think you use the word gambling, but I suppose on a more palatable way of putting it, be investing, wouldn't it? And in investing, they always say, the advice is always never invest more than you can afford. To lose.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people you do, and it is a balancing act. It always is.
It is a balance. But having said that, every business, wherever you've got to take a certain amount of risk. Otherwise, you're just never going to get anywhere. But it's got to be a calculated risk. And you take on a new contract. You sort of they pay you on time. Then you monitor, the size of that sort of going forward, always on the basis though you get paid on time.
Yeah. And these other things as well, and these like how you actually finance the business.
And people get very, very concerned if they take on a poor client. It happens to everybody, and then they get very nervous about how they should deal with it. And I've always said to, we've had that many instances, what's the very worst thing they can do to you? Not pay you. What are they doing? They're not paying you. So you just take whatever they actually need to do.
Yeah, I guess so. Because really,
that's the very first thing. That's the worst thing they can do, not pay you.
Yeah. Do you know what? Such a strange one, isn't it? Because I think, there's always this thing.
They say they might not give us any more work. Well, they might not give you any more work they're not going to pay you for.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's like, that might be a good thing if they don't give us any more work because they're going to treat us like this. It's such a difficult. I always say, it can be a very profitable, very lucrative business, but it's a hard game to be in at times. Scaffolding.
Yes, but you've just got to. There's always, whatever company you actually work for, there are always a number of companies that they will actually pay first, and you just need to be one of them. And that doesn't mean to say you've got to be sort of very commercially aggressive. It just means to say you always want to be paid on time, and you're always there when it's to be paid. When is it going to be paid?
Again, I think.
Yeah, and people, and if you provide a good service, and people are aware and they're good customers, and they're aware that you want to be paid on time. In most instances, they will. And then you need to monitor it. That's it.
Yeah. Because I've always found, I don't know whether it was like this for yourself all those years ago when you were first starting out a small scaffolding company. You're the good guy, you're the friendly. Oh yeah, we can do this, we can do that, we can help you out. You are the wife and kids and all the rest of it. But you're also having to be the bad guy when things don't get paid, and that's a difficult balance to strike. Also,
you're not being a bad guy. You just need to be paid. You take on a work for a client, and you do your absolute utmost to sort of do a good job of it.
Yeah,
look after their interests, and as a result of that, all you're actually asking is to be paid on time.
Yeah, it's some of the language that gets used in these. When you do ask as well, it's like they'll always kind of throw out, "Oh, we deal with 700, 800 grand, contract. We've got this much going out every week. What are you so worried about $5,000 for?" And then you're like,
"You're not worried about it. You just need to be paid on time.
We need to be paid on time." And it's like, well, that I don't care how much your other clients get. Yeah,
it's all
that's what we want.
It's all relative. Whether it's 5,000 to one company is 500,000 to another, all dependent upon size. But it's all relative. It's just the same.
So it's just about getting, what you what you're worth, isn't it?
Yes, just about sort of discipline. That's it, really. That's how I found it.
Speaking of discipline and like routines and stuff like that, you mentioned before about physical fitness as well as being mentally sharp and all the rest of it.
Yes, yeah.
Is that something that you're still sort of quite active with now?
Yes, yeah. If I want to work and continue to work, and I can't work effectively if I'm not fit. So I have to be fit to do what I really love when it's working.
Do you have like a routine, like a morning routine or?
No, I swim whenever I can. I go to the gym, I've got a personal trainer. I see occasionally when I can, or I walk. But I do one of the three. You can always fit in one of the three somewhere. Yeah, that's it, really.
Because you likened it before, and I thought it was a great analogy, by the way. You likened it before to, in a business sense, picking up the phone.
Well, in my early days, when I first started with TRAD, or in the TRAD group, when it was, there was a very small business that I was given the opportunity to actually run. It had nothing. All it had was some plant and a lorry. That was it. Had no work, had no pipeline. And the only thing I could actually do to sort of make it work every day was to go in, pick the phone up, and get an inquiry, price it, and then just keep on doing that. And every time, I'm not a natural salesman. People in contracting generally probably are not. I dreaded it, picking it up. But every time I picked it up and got something, I was really glad that I did. And it was the only reason how I actually sort of managed to actually build what was then Sevenhurst into TRAD Scaffolding Systems into the business that it became after about 4 to 5 years, just by doing that. So
just that discipline of getting in, getting up, and like training, like going to the gym.
Just doing that. Really, that's the only way you could make it work.
Yeah, it's taking action. I asked you before. I don't know if I asked you while we've been on air, but if I didn't, I'd definitely like to know. Well, you kind of gave me the answer. It just struck me as, for someone who writes so often and so well, you're not a person who reads very much. In the sense of like business or self-help or any of those types of books.
No, and I'm being entirely honest. All of the content is mine, but I do have somebody I work with who probably sort of rearranges all of my thoughts and all of that into sort of perhaps something that makes it more readily readable. So I'm always very honest. But all of the content is mine. So no, I don't read, but probably all of what I'm saying is as a direct result of my experience. So I've been very fortunate. I've been involved in a startup, been involved in a merger, an acquisition, run a scaffolding contracting business. I've sort of been involved in the hire and sales business. I've had a great sort of exposure to so many sort of disciplines, and obviously and a safety systems business. So I've had a lot of exposure to a lot of things over a long period of time, and that's it really. I write because I think a lot of what I've actually learned is useful, hopefully, to people in the industry in sort of general, and I'm giving something back in that respect. And obviously, it keeps me relevant and keeps my sort of profile there. So if people want to engage me in any sort of capacity, they can see from articles that I write. Then obviously, I do know what I'm talking about, and I can help them.
Yeah, it's just really interesting to have such an appetite for writing, and then to say, reading, it's or reading sort of business books. Not really for me. It's just it's lived experience. Yeah, do you think you'd ever go to the extent of writing a book?
Maybe at the end of my career, but I'm not there yet.
Too busy.
Too busy. I don't know whether people would be interested in reading it. I don't know. We'll see. It's not top of my list at the moment.
I'd certainly buy it when it if it ever does come out. Yeah. All I can say from now is thanks so much for coming on. Thanks so much for making the journey from London all the way up to the dingy north. I hope it's not disappointed you too much.
No, I'm quite happy to, if you want to do anything in the future, anything I can do to actually sort of help people in the industry that's been very good to me, I'm quite happy to do. So if people are actually sort of interested in what I've got to say and it helps them, then that's fine.
Yep.
So, yeah, thank you.
So lastly, before we close up, where can people find you? How can people get in contact with Morix? Or
It's all on my website, www.mor1x.co.uk. And my mobile number, which is always on, 07 555 800 700. And anything that I'm imparted by anybody, it's always totally confidential. I speak to a number of people, but I've got a reputation that I'm very discreet. I never discuss anybody's business with anybody else.
Des, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm going to pick your brains even more once we get off air.
Okay. Thank
Des,
you.
top man. Thank you.
Thank you very much.